Hello and welcome to the Six Figure Authors, the show that helps you take your writing career to the next level. I'm Lindsay Baroker and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Andrea Pearson.
And I'm Joe Lallo.
And this week it's going to just be the three of us answering some listener questions from about 3 months ago. So our apologies. I'm actually the one who booked back-to-back guests in February. So it's been a while since we've had a chance to just answer questions. And we're going to be talking about passive advertising, rapid release, marketing, fiction when you're not solidly in any one genre, and several other things that people asked. Before we jump into that stuff, do you guys have any news that you would like to discuss?
News that I would like to discuss or that's just boiling in my brain needing to burst out?
Well, you know you want to talk to us because you can't talk to anybody else but your family right now. So we should say we're recording this on March 23rd, so it'll be a week and a half out of date by the time it comes. So who knows what will be going on by the time you actually listen to this.
Yeah, and for people listening in the future, that's 2020. I can't believe we're already in 2020. We're already into March. We're almost done with March. Our quarantine was actually supposed to end today. And the doctor was like, let's push it back one more week. And I'm like, are you serious? But then everything is falling apart anyway. So it's not like I'm getting a break from anything because, everything's just crazy insane. And I think our listeners already know that. But I'm nearly done with Raven Huntress, the fourth book in my Midnight Chronicles. My husband Nolan has been helping with the writing. It's been a lot of fun to work with him. And it's been honestly a great way to, I don't know, like my stress levels went down considerably once we decided to bring him on, which just goes to show that I'm just, I bite off too much, more than I can handle. And I had the books up for pre-order. I think I've talked about that on the show before. So books 1 through 3 have already been released and they release when they're supposed to, but book 4, 5, and 6, like our lives just pretty much fell apart. And so I extended my pre-order deadlines on those by a month each. And I don't honestly know at this point if we're going to be able to make those just because of how crazy things have been. And so I don't know, I guess we'll just see. But our baby hasn't gained any weight in the last month and he got taller by a little bit. So technically he lost weight. I'm actually holding him right now for the people who are watching because he just missed mommy. So, well, the people who are watching won't be able to see him because he's under the camera. He's like, why do you keep lifting me up, Mom? But yeah, so we're just, I don't know, he's just going to be tiny always. And then hopefully, he's happy, he's growing. Well, he's kind of growing. So he's hopefully going to be okay. And I muted myself on accident there. And I'm hitting the shift tab or alt tab. Anyway, so let's see, trying to remember what else I wanted to talk about. We did buy a 3D printer. I was talking to Lindsay and Joe about that before we started recording, and we're going to be making, all of my books have magical items in them. So my husband's going to be designing those, and then we're going to be making those for readers. And we've done that in the past. I have a couple keys and a couple of magical items from my very first series, and we've made quite a bit of money. I mean, we sell them for $5 each and they cost like 5 cents to make. And we've sold several hundred of those. And so that was definitely worth it. So we'll be doing that again. And then having a 3D printer is going to be a lot of fun. All of the technological advancements there. So let's see, I'm trying to remember what else. I think I already said that I'm under contract now for audiobooks for 3 of my 3 books. I think I might have said that in one of our most recent shows. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. What's going on. I've got more updates that we can go into a little bit later when we start getting into a couple more discussions. So off to you guys.
I lost the mute button there. As for me, Coin of Kenvard is Book of Deacon 6. That is coming out on April 16th. It is in pre-order now. On April 1st, I might change my mind on it, a full series price drop for about 2 weeks, like for the 2 weeks leading up to the release of the book, where I would drop the earlier books to a lower discount and just slowly staircase up to the normal price release for the 6th book. The goal would be to run a couple of Facebook ads, carousel ads I'm thinking of doing, where I will show all of the books that are being discounted. At one of the, I think it was Nink, there was a presentation where I forget who it was. It was one of 2 people was talking about they like to do the carousel ads where they actually show their book cover, which is often a no-no, and they like to put the price discount on it, which is often a no-no. They like to do both of those things, and it works fine for them. So I'm going to try doing that, and I will, abandon ship if it turns out that it's not converting as well as I would like, and just go back to a standard advertise, because I've been testing some Facebook ads and did reasonably well with them in small volume. So that's going to be happening. I also have been a little bit distracted in the recent days because of the pandemic, and also Animal Crossing released a couple days ago. That was a very handy way to distract myself from the pandemic and also everything else. So that's sort of what I've been going on. But I'm about halfway done with the Free Wrench 6, which is the current project. When that is done, I'm probably going to take a couple of weeks to do short stories to refill, well, to polish up short stories to refill my Patreon release thing, because I'm just about out of short stories there. And I'm just, other than that, just chugging along the way I always am.
I find that I kind of have to avoid things like online games and any television series with 8 seasons that I could potentially get into, because I'm not very good at just doing like a half hour or an hour, as I found out with the Lost years, also known as the World of Warcraft years, where I have very little memory of doing things, of producing anything other than the bare minimum work stuff. So I usually don't know anything about games or videos, TV. I will say for my news, I launched the second book in my urban fantasy series. Things are going okay. I've definitely spent more money to launch this on than I have in the past in smaller, less competitive genres. And I wouldn't say it's actually earning any more than like my space opera did, or my last was kind of a mystery fantasy series. My last really good launch was like 2 years ago, my Heritage of Power series with dragons. This one has dragons too, but they're less of a thing in urban fantasy. It's like vampires and werewolves, I guess, and fae, whatever fae are now the thing. But, so, and it's hard to say, is it me jumping genres, doing different genres, or is it just a sign of more competitive times? That is, of course, the most competitive fantasy genre that you can go into. I feel like I sold more the first week and was up like around 130, 140 ranking in the store for a week, or maybe I held it for almost 2 weeks. So that was better than I usually am able to get with like epic fantasy or space opera. But it's fallen off quicker, and I don't know if the people that were going to buy it just all bought it that first couple weeks. It's still doing okay. I think I'm getting probably, and this may be true for a lot of people right now, maybe getting more borrows than sales, especially when it comes to book 1 is 99 cents, and then book 2 and 3 will both be $4.99 or are $4.99. So, it's a little early to predict stuff, but we can't call it a recession until there's like 2 quarters in a row of negative GDP. So, but everybody's like, yeah, that's pretty much going to happen because nobody's working and producing things right now. And it's kind of a crazy time. So it's hard to know how much that plays into things too. But I see people selling well, and I'm still doing, fine. I'm just like, yeah, I paid just as much to do the same amount of sales and earnings basically. So we will see. I'm probably planning about 8 books in this series. I've written the first 4. And when I'm done, I'm always kind of more motivated by what I'm excited by than necessarily doing the smart thing, like releasing another series in the same genre right after finishing one, while you've got the momentum and the fans and the readers and all that. But we shall see how things go. I'm at this point, considering I know many people now that are just out of work because they got laid off while this is going on, I feel grateful that my life hasn't been super changed. I worked from home to start from. I was telling the guys before, it's like, well, now I go up to the bonus room to work out instead of driving to the gym. But obviously I was already working from home, and I'm still selling books. So hopefully that will continue to be true in the future. We'll see. This is probably not anything we're gonna bounce back from really easily, at least economically. So we'll definitely have to be smart authors / business owners going forward. In other news, I finally finished my 7th sci-fi novel and sent it off to my editor. That one was a little over 130,000 words, so not as long as book 6 of the series, but still, that's about 50,000 more than the urban fantasy novels are averaging. And it's actually, having written those longer books recently, it's kind of skewing my perception as what's good for page reads for a day. So I'm having to remind myself that the urban fantasies are shorter books. I actually went in and did the math. I'm like, oh, 80,000 page reads yesterday divided by 406 pages instead of whatever it was, 7. And I'm like, oh, actually, people read more than they borrowed yesterday. So it's good to do the math and check on that. Last thing I will bring up here is that a couple weeks ago, I had a book bub for the first book in my 4-book Chains of Honor series. That's a free book one. And I'd been kind of wondering lately if they were still worth doing for free books, because BookBub doubled their price a year or two ago. Free books used to be a lot cheaper than like a 99-cent bargain deal. It was like $2.20 in sci-fi and fantasy. And I think this one was more like $500 to promote a free book. Obviously, you're banking on people going and reading more books in this series. I have 2, 3, and 4. They've been out for like a year, so that series is complete. And so I actually went in and checked. Now with Amazon's reporting, it's a little easier just to go like, oh, did those 3 books increase sales? And before the BookBub, books 2, 3, and 4 were only making about $40 a day combined. And that was a little over 2 weeks ago. And then when there was a noticeable jump when the promo went live. So that day, it jumped up to like 300 that day. And so far at 2 weeks later, subtracting the $500 I spent, I'm up about $2,500 so far in 2 weeks. So, and that's just at Amazon. I didn't really peek anywhere else. This is a wide series. So basically I found that it's still worth it to get a free book bub if you can, if you have a series, and if book 1 leads into the other books. I was impressed at how many people actually went and bought book 2, 3, and 4 the same day as the free. Especially now, this was March 10th, I think. So it's sort of ramping up into coronavirus craziness and maybe penny pinching. So before we jump into our listener questions, I guess maybe we've kind of been talking about it a little bit, skirting it. Are you guys doing anything or planning to do anything to kind of deal with what's going on? Looming recession potentially, lots of people sick, lots of people losing their jobs, maybe not being able to afford as many discretionary items. What are you guys doing or planning to do? I know it's still pretty early days.
For me, I'm holding steady for the course. My life is, as you said, pretty much unchanged by the pandemic. I was already working from home, and the people that I live with, one of them already worked from home. So my stress levels are very high just because I just have sort of an empathy for the world right now. I did a couple of things just, knowing that people are stuck at home and knowing that people are going to be hard up for cash. Smashwords is currently running a month-long sale for, you can discount your books. I think it's called Authors Give Back. I put all of my omnibus things, I put at half price or 60% off, I think. I created a collection of short stories that were sort of the leftovers of my Patreon books that weren't already released in the recent collection. I took all of those and made that into a free release to give to people. So also, in terms of the recession, my sales have been sagging already anyway, so I was sort of already developing my plan for what I'm supposed to do about that, and it's focused a little bit on increasing the amount of promotion that I do, and probably next year I'm going to do a little bit more focusing on not rapid release, but single genre, single series release, because this year I'm doing book 6 in 3 different series, which is not a great way to turn around sales. But so I'm probably going to be doing that. If things get really bad, one thing that I've been thinking of doing is, especially if I do that thing where I move on to a new series, maybe taking one of my older series and giving it a permanent price break, like just knock it down to $3.99 instead of, or $2.99 instead of $4.99, just to see if it moves the needle at all. Also potentially take one of those series once I have a fresh series to replace it, maybe take one of the older series and move it exclusive, because all of my stuff, with one exception, is wide right now. So those are the kind of things I might do to try to revitalize my earnings. But as it is, I was already trying to do all of that. So it's a strange thing to say, but this has not changed matters for me very much at all.
And for me, this it was kind of surprising to me. My sales have actually gone up, especially like print book sales, which, you know, totally caught me off guard because I'm like, didn't expect that. But one thing I'm noticing is my readers are super lonely. I'm going to guess this is going to be the same for a lot of our listeners' readers. They're very lonely. And so last week after we finished recording our episode, I decided to hop in and do a live video with my readers. And I was like, hey, what are you guys doing? Do you guys want to, do you guys want to talk more? And the answer was an overwhelming yes. And so I'm going to be doing basically a book club event twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. They were the ones who voted on how often. I had several people say more than that, please, because a lot of them are retired people who can't go anywhere. And so all of their social outlets are gone now because they are in the risk bracket, you know, people at risk, whatever. And so I'm going to be doing book club events with them. And for the most part, I'll be doing my books just because I don't have the time to read fast enough to read 2 books a week that, you know, from other authors, but I will be doing other authors' books too. And let's see, trying to decide. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to sneeze here. That's always great while you're recording. Yeah, so I'm going to be doing a book club events twice a week. I'm very much looking forward to that. I'll be doing them right after we finish here, and then on Thursdays, like I said. And then also, like I said, my sales have been going up, which surprised me. Wasn't expecting that. And so a lot of people, like, this is a recession. You know, people aren't doing super well. They don't have incomes coming in, a lot of people. So what I've decided to do was to do a big promotion this week on my book, starting Wednesday and going until whenever countdown deals end, you know, so Tuesday or whatever next week. And every single book I've written will be 99 cents or free. So a first book in a series will be free, and then everything else after that would be 99 cents. I've never done this before. I have no idea if it's going to work. I'm just hoping it'll give people something to do. And then also, since I'm doing book club events, they can grab my books, you know, for free that we'll be doing. The box sets will be $3.99. And then individual books will be either free or 99 cents. They'll be free if they're first in a series, and then 99 cents otherwise. And that's on the reader side. Yeah, I can't wait to see how it goes. Oh, and my prints. I'm also going to be discounting my print books. I'm dropping them. I usually keep them around $15.99. I know a lot of people like saying, you know, keep them as cheap as possible, but I keep them at $15.99 just because that's what I started out as back when, you know, everybody was comparing to traditional publishers, and that's how much traditional publishers were doing them for. And so I've been doing mine at $15.99. And so I'm dropping those to about $10.99, basically as low as I can go and still end at 99 cents. And so that's part of my promotion too. Because like I said, a lot of people have been buying the print books. And then so that's the reader side. On the author side, I've been doing daily productivity challenges and writing reminders, basically in, you know, just to remind people that there's another world outside of the coronavirus. And I think a lot of people are just tired of hearing about coronavirus. And so I've been doing those in my book club promotions and more group, you know, just every day I have something go out that says, what's your goal today? What are you working on? And the goal for that is to help other authors stay focused, because I've been having a hard time staying focused. Anyway, so if you want to come join us over in that group, and the baby wants to say hi, he's usually very quiet. Joe's waving at him. He's usually very quiet, but apparently he was like, Mommy's talking too much. So I'm going to hand it back to Lindsay.
All right. Yeah, I've seen a lot of authors doing promos and giving away free books, and I've been, you know, thinking about how I can do some of that stuff too. Stuff that's on pre-order for $4.99, I'm just going to leave it. You know, authors got to get paid too. And then, of course, I've actually already heard from somebody that saw some backlash from apparently so many people are doing free stuff that they were like, how rude of you to launch a book at full price. And, you know, so that may be something you have to deal with too, but hopefully not too much. A lot of the stuff I'm launching is in KU, so they can always subscribe if they want it for free. And, you know, we'll see how it goes. I'm with Joe with Smashwords doing that promo too. I haven't actually promoted it other than giving a tweet out on Twitter, but a lot of people have been taking advantage. I peeked in there today, and a lot of people had gotten some of my stuff using the coupon, especially the free things. And, you know, for me, I usually do series starters and box sets and stuff. So, you know, it may actually lead more people into my series. I currently have 1 omnibus left in Kindle Unlimited. I've been saying forever I'm going to take my Heritage of Power series out, so I finally let everything run out. I think there's 1 book with like 2 days left, and I'm going to publish it everywhere else. But I'm a little regretful for that, because boy, do those box sets get a lot of page reads, and at least right now, that's still they're pretty lucrative. We'll see if a lot more people end up going in KU, or there's a lot more box sets and things in KU. Obviously, if there's more, or if there's just more people reading overall, what we get paid will probably go down. We'll see, you know. This, like I said, it's probably going into, we were kind of heading toward a recession anyway, so possibly, you know, I'm not a financial expert, but I was hearing that a lot from the financial experts. So we need to be thinking about not just like the next couple months, but you know, what the next year, 2 years may look like. So, you know, just keeping track of what people are doing, what's working, what we can take advantage of, or at least not just sitting on the sidelines and not adapting, I guess I would say. And as I'm also like trying to think of what are just some cool things I can do for the readers. I'm not as garrulous as Andrea, and probably a little horrified at the idea of Zoom chats and that kind of thing. But I'm actually working on a bonus scene right now. I'm kind of between, I finished the sci-fi, but haven't started the next urban fantasy novel. So I was like, let me just write a little bonus scene for the blog, and I'll get that up this week. And, you know, just trying to do things. I'm trying to also, figuring people are sick of hearing about this stuff, trying to keep my social media pages, you know, not ignoring it completely, but I'm not posting any articles or anything like that. I'm like, here's your dragon soap, you know, make sure you wash your hands. I think that's the closest I've gotten to, you know, mentioning virus stuff. And just, you know, doing the usual stuff, trying to post scenes and snippets and, you know, maybe something I'm reading. But I guess we'll see how things go going forward, and we will try to keep on track of things and you know, continue to get people to interview for you guys that hopefully will have some good insight, good advice. All right, shall we now go into the listener questions? Nodding, there's nodding. All right, several months ago, Val Neal asked or said, in a recent episode, Lindsay talked about how some of her books, or a lot of them, don't fit clearly into one market, and how she's struggling to determine what kind of book it was in some cases, or struggled. I've asked all my beta readers to classify my first book, and everyone gives a different answer. Dark fantasy, urban fantasy, historical fantasy. I can see this drastically changing the blurb and cover. 2 questions. How do you find out what subgenre your book falls under? And if it's not a great fit anywhere, how the heck do you market it? Just throw a dart at the subgenre that's close enough? Andrea, do you want to answer that first?
Yeah, sure. And I did come up with my answer a few months ago. So I'm like, okay, what was I saying? Oh yes, that makes sense still. So yeah, I go by what's selling well currently out of and my books fall under a bunch of different subgenres under fantasy, because I didn't really follow tropes very closely when I first started writing. And I've kind of stuck with that. I just write what is most fascinating to me and most enjoyable to me to write. But what I do is I will pay attention to what's going on with the genre, and then I will target readers who read those subgenres, and then I mix things up as needed. So I think I've said this before, my Mosaic Chronicles was written in 2014, and back in October, September-ish, I rebranded it as Academy Urban Fantasy, and it's been doing really well there. And then once it, that dies off, which it has a little bit, I will go ahead and switch back to the regular, it's like kind of like a fantasy that you can't really tell. It's obviously not epic fantasy, so it's contemporary fantasy look. And then as to figure out what you write, there's lots of good ways to do that. So read a lot of other books, right? Pay attention to similarities, pay attention to what readers say. So you can actually read your reviews if you want to, and then just see what readers are pointing out and what they're commenting on and, making notes about. So for example, when I'm working with my RCast team, my review crew, I'll read their reviews to get little excited blurbs to post to my readers on my newsletter list and to put on Facebook and things like that. And so that kind of gives me an idea of what they're thinking about my books. And a lot of the comments I get back is it's creepier than other fantasy. There's a lot more twists and surprises than a lot of fantasies they read, which again is because I don't write to trope, write to market. And I wish I would like to, and I tried to throw some of that in. So pay attention to what readers are saying. And in the beginning, things won't be as clear cut, but you'll eventually get a feel as you hear more and more feedback, and you hear from other people. And then as you're reading and paying attention to other people's books, and then also working with a good and experienced editor helps. They'll be able to help you pinpoint things that are for your genre and things that are in your genre that are specific to your books.
Yep. What can I add in this? I've historically done a very bad job at identifying genre accurately. There are sites that are useful for this. TV Tropes is a good resource if you just want to know a lot more about a given. I mean, as the name would suggest, they identify tropes, and they have sections for genres and subgenres that sort of list off the tropes that are common within. I've never done that before writing a genre, which is why I often the things that I associate with a genre, it turns out other people don't associate with a genre, and vice versa. The closest I got was steampunk, and even that was far off because it was not in Victorian England. It was in a Victorian England-like secondary world. So, when it comes to uh, you trust your readers. As Andrea said, your readers are going to have a better idea of where it falls than you will, because typically speaking, I would say a lot of readers read more than writers read, if you could follow that sentence. Um, Pick a genre when it comes to, like, when you have your list of genres that it sort of fits in, especially if it's straddle genres. Pick the genre that is a good match to your story, but also strikes the best balance between selling well and not being too competitive. So, like, if you can comfortably fit into, for example, epic fantasy and urban fantasy, chances are, if you're not super duper up on urban fantasy, if you're not super duper up on marketing, urban fantasy is harder to market. So maybe lean toward the epic fantasy, that sort of thing. But try to hint at the other elements in your blurb. Just don't want to surprise people with the content that doesn't fit the genre that it's classified as. Obviously, you can give it both genres, but you're going to have more success if you're focusing on just the one genre for your promotion and your branding. So yeah, don't forget also that you have keywords and things like that, which don't necessarily classify you as a subgenre, but can catch the people who are looking for those other genres that you haven't chosen as your category. Basically, you're going to be hedging your bets a lot if this is your situation, and just you know. Also, you don't have to stick with one. If you find that what you're doing hasn't worked, then try some of the others and see if they do work.
Yep, and I want you to know, Val, and anybody else listening, that this is super common for authors for your first series, especially. You're usually not thinking about marketing when you're like, you think you're going to write the book, and when you're done with the book, that's the victory. And if whether you're going to self-publish it, that's when you start really having to pay attention to the marketing. Interestingly, and I think the advice is still the same. If you go look at like what agents want for trad publishing, they're always like, we want new and fresh, we want it different. And that was my thought when I wrote my first series. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do orcs and dragons and all that stuff. And so there's none of that in my first series. And it's a steam age setting, but it's definitely not steampunk. It's made up more of an epic fantasy kind of world. And I think I ended up putting it in swords and sorcery. It's sort of the closest mix, but swords and sorcery with steam and not many swords. So, and, I didn't really know then, but what Joe just said is right. Pick one, basically. Go look and see what's most competitive. Like, as I just found out, urban fantasy, man, you're never going to get to #1 in that. Harry Potter's 8 books are all in that category, and they're all in Kindle Unlimited, so they're all always in the top 100 or top couple hundred. I mean, you can release something in a series and pop up there maybe for a day, but as far as sticking in the top 10, that's pretty tough over in that category. But I know, so here I am in 9 and 10 in urban fantasy, but my book was #1 in dark fantasy for a while. And that was a lot easier. You could be #1 with a 200 ranking instead of a 2 ranking required. So take a look at what's competitive. As I can say from my experience, it's if you're really to market, there's nothing wrong with shooting for a real competitive genre. But if you're kind of in the middle, if you're less to market, it's going to be really hard to be seen as much in those super competitive categories. So it's better to pick one where you can be the big fish in the small pond versus trying to be a little teeny minnow in a huge pond. I think. I mean, maybe other people will disagree that maybe you'll just sell more if you're in that super competitive thing. But as of right now, Amazon allows you to be in 10 categories anyway, so you can just select them or email Author Central and ask for them. But you do want to focus on whichever one you think is your best bet. Say it's dark fantasy or maybe historical fantasy. I think that one's less competitive. you know, kind of tailor the blurb, pick out the things that are going to attract that dark fantasy reader, do the cover in line with what's selling in that genre. And then, like Joe said, you don't want to surprise anybody. You want to make sure it seems like a decent fit for that. But that's about all I have to say on that. I mean, I feel be more prepared if you're farther out, if you're cross genre, if you're not really too trope, to give away book one for free, or at least like if you're doing Kindle Unlimited, to run some free days, maybe make that one 99 cents for a while. You know, especially if you have more out in the series. I feel that the farther you are away from what the market wants, the more you have to do the free samples at Costco. You know, like, you want to try this weird cheese with the blue stuff running through it. It's free. Why wouldn't you try it? So, and that can work. And then, you know, because I feel like that first series for me, I probably have the most truest diehard response from the fans of anything I've written, and it really ended up connecting with some people. And I've gotten a lot of fan art and fan fiction from that one. I was also writing slower back then, so it took them longer to read through it, so they probably had more time to speculate on how things would go. But sometimes when you're that quirky person that doesn't quite fit, and you can find your readers, they will become really true fans. All right, next question is from The Mind of Montgomery Harris. I would love to see a discussion dedicated to passive advertising. What passive advertising has helped you guys and your guests out?
I can't really answer for guests. They can answer for themselves when we have them come in. Maybe we could pose that question to them. But for me, Facebook ads are definitely my favorite form of passive advertising. I always try to keep at least 2 running, boosting traffic to 2 different series. And then I still do book giveaways where, you know, I'll give away like a Kindle Paperwhite or a $50 Amazon gift card. And then I target my readers, specifically my target audience and genre, through Facebook ads. And those have worked fairly decently for me.
It's not as useful as it once was, but perma-free book one remains my primary passive advertising. I get newsletter signups pretty easily, even from people who don't go on to buy books 2 and 3 and so on. I also have, until recently, had a drip feed Amazon advertising campaign. Technically, I still do, but it's tapered off, and I haven't made any new ones. So, but perma-free still, like if I look at my sales reports, the perma-free, it technically is working exactly as it used to. Like, it still converts the amount that it used to. It just, there's not nearly as many people getting that free book. So yeah, perma-free works. And then when you decide to go active, when I promote the perma-free book, then it briefly jumps back up to where it was, and then everything else jumps up, you know, in the following weeks. So perma-free is still where I work.
Right, and I'm going to answer similarly, and I'll say there's really not much as far as completely passive. And it's funny because anytime there's that Smart Passive Income podcast by Pat Flynn, you guys might have heard, and I think if you listen to the interviews, you'll be like, okay, absolutely none of this is passive. And I feel like Pat himself has admitted, like, there are no really completely truly passive investments out there, and I feel like it's probably the same with marketing. Although I think the perma-free book one is the most passive thing you can do. But even then, like, I don't know about you, Joe, but I will occasionally go get a free Booksy for that one of those book ones, or I'll try to get a BookBub for a free box set or something. And there, you know, you get a few. I definitely, you know, because I mentioned in the beginning that I got the Warrior Mage book one of my Chains of Honor series had its first free BookBub at the beginning, which led to sales increasing. But there were, just from that book being free, you know, it was about $40 a day from books 2, 3, and 4 anyway. And that's on a book I haven't promoted in over a year or done any, you know, even mentioned in over a year. I've been, up until this new urban fantasy release, I was focusing completely on the sci-fi and not even mailing my fantasy list. So that was a pretty passive, you know, it was trickling, you know, getting enough downloads to make some money on the sales of the rest of the series each day. You'll probably find less of that if you're not already publishing, and you know, a lot of that I'm sure is people checking out, what else does Lindsay have out there? You know, I finished this series and let's see what else she has. So I'm not saying that it's going to, perma-free book one is going to be the magic solution to getting sales if you don't already have sales, but it is something. In the beginning especially, I had my first Emperor's Edge book, I had it on Wattpad. I did a audiobook version. I had it on Podio books and that was more of a thing. So I was always willing to give it away for free in order to hopefully get people to check out the rest of the series. And if you don't have a book one yet, or you don't have a series, something that's worked for me, same idea is like, I have one novel called Fractured Stars. It's just kind of a standalone, sort of a sci-fi romance. And so I wrote like a 20,000 word novella that, introduces a character and kind of leads into it, and made that free. And it's, that book's been out for almost two years. It's long since out of KU, so it's not getting free people downloading, not getting page reads and that kind of thing. And it's another one I don't really mention because it's just one book, but I went to see how it's doing, and it made a little over $200 on Amazon in the first 3 weeks of March here. And that's just from, a little more from the other sites too. And that's just really just people grabbing that novella. And at the end of the novella, which was free, I was very clearly said, hey, there's a whole novel for $3.99 if you want to pick it up. If you do blog stuff, we had Ricardo Fayette on talking about SEO. That's the kind of thing where if you've had a blog for a while, you'll go look at your Google Analytics and you'll see people just stumble onto it, searching for things. Like the older your site is, especially if you get people linking to it regularly, the more of an authority site it becomes, the more likely you're going to get free search engine traffic. And I don't do a lot of, I do no tracking links, I think, on my blog, unless I do an affiliate link, which I sometimes do that. But I've definitely seen that I will get traffic to like interviews, because I'm always trying to post little like character interviews, like I said, I'm going to do a bonus scene here. And it's kind of random happenstance if that happens to lead somebody to your site that then goes on to buy your books. But that's another thing you can do that is for the long term. And, I have articles up on self-publishing on my blog from like 2011 that people still find. And, every now and then somebody's like, hey, maybe I'll check out their free book one. I happen to be a fantasy reader too. So I would say website. Same thing if you're into doing like YouTube videos, if you can find a way to link that into your stories. You'll find that stuff you did, especially if you keep publishing to your blog or your YouTube channel or your podcast, it's stuff you did 4 years ago can continue to get traffic. And, it's really going to depend on the kind of content you have out there, whether that's going to translate into sales. We've talked before how it's a lot easier in nonfiction than fiction, but you never know. If you help somebody out, they might check out your book or ask somebody else to if they know somebody that reads that genre. All right, next question, Meg Jolly. I would love to hear all your thoughts on the best way to launch in 2020. From what I see, 99-cent box sets and 99-cent rapid release launches are not what they used to be, and for sure not a guaranteed success, at least for the same ad spend that they were a year ago. So how would you launch a series? Price points, timing in the year, timing between books, etc. And how would you launch a box set? Price points, timing, wide versus KU. All right, there's a lot in this question. So Andrea, do you want to take a stab at it first?
Yeah, I was going to say, let's do a whole episode on this question. I'm just going to address a couple parts in there. I release all my new stuff into Kindle Unlimited. First in series books usually get launched at 99 cents. Sometimes I leave them there, but sometimes I'll raise the price. I almost always release later books at full price or just $1 off, and I'll keep it at just $1 off from usually when I announce Wednesday to my readers until Saturday, just so they have an incentive to download. I found that I don't, and then also I rarely run discounts on later books in series because I found that readers will wait until you discount them otherwise. And so, because I very, very, very rarely discount, I think this promotion that I'm doing this week is the first time I'll have discounted probably 60% of my books, maybe 75% of my books. So they know I don't ever, I very rarely discount later books in series. And it helps them actually download when I launch those books. And so I do promotions on the first books in series all the time. And so they know that, but they also, I'm okay with them waiting and getting it, and when it's a free or when it's permanent free or when it's, very cheap. But I do use download bonuses still. I find them to be very helpful still. And so that helps have a book launch go successfully. I'm a fan of launching a book when it's ready rather than waiting until, rather than holding it off and doing rapid release, mainly because I've never been able to do a rapid release because of the timing with my family, with my kids and things like that. And then I just focus on making that book as attractive as possible to readers, basically getting a lot of reviews on it, and making sure that there's other books in the series to follow up after, before I do any big pushes on that. And because I find it easier to make money on series that have already gained some traction than it is for me to make money on launches. And I know that a lot of authors, we still have a perception that the book launch is everything. And it's a lot of that is because, traditional publishing, that's what they do. But it's also because as an author, it's really hard to release a book and not have it do well when it launches. But the launch really isn't the end of the world if it goes poorly. And it's also not the only chance your book will get. So we're going to be doing this for several years. So if it doesn't have a huge launch, then just make things line up perfectly so that next time you have a promotion, it does well.
My feelings on this are Kindle Unlimited for your initial release is probably the best bet, but I always like to have things wide if I can. So Kindle Unlimited until that starts to lose steam, and then wide just to catch the rest of the people is what I like to do. Or rather, what I would recommend you do, because what I actually do is start off wide, with one exception. I will be changing that in the future. So I'm giving you advice for future Joe as well. When it comes to when to release, I would avoid the holiday season for releases because they tend to be pretty crowded with traditional releases, and also people tend not to buy ebooks as gifts. I've also heard that summer, for some reason, is considered a low spot in the publishing industry, although honestly, I have not seen 2 years in a row in my sales that have supported the idea that summer is a low point. So maybe that's another traditional thing that just didn't carry over, or maybe it's true for everyone but me. I never know for sure. Releasing as rapidly as is comfortable for you is probably a good idea when you're in the mid to late series, so that you can keep the momentum up. If you're just starting off and you're able to, I don't think it's a bad idea to have 2 books ready for release pretty close to each other at the very beginning, because it's very hard to get it's impossible to get momentum off of 1 book. So if you have 2 books, then that's better. I agree that, like, I have tried to save up 3 books, release them all at once. I can write reasonably quickly, so that was only about a couple of months of holding off on releases. But especially if this is your career already, and you're not used to doing rapid releases like that, you can really shoot yourself in the foot. If those 3 releases didn't go well, you've left yourself no room to pivot. So rapid release is a good idea, but keep it to what you can do comfortably, so that you don't have long gaps. And as for pricing, I still shoot for $4.99 for a full-length novel. And when it comes to pricing the box set and launching the box set, I typically take the cost of all the books that are in the box set and then knock $1 or 2 off. It depends on how many books are in it, or if there's any bonus stuff, because occasionally I'll write 1 or 2 bonus stories that aren't available anywhere else, and then just sell it for the full price of the novels in it, and consider those stories to sort of be what you get for buying the books, the box set. But that's where I stand on all that.
All right, so I'll also try to just go through the list here and answer some of this. Time of year, a lot of times that people say are down times a year for book sales have been good for me. Like, I've also had no trouble launching a new series in the summer, and I've had good luck right after Christmas. I have avoided that sort of early November to Christmas for launching a new series. I will definitely put out a book in an existing series where I know the fans are going to go grab it no matter when it comes out. And I found that time after Christmas to be really solid for me. I've done a couple, not this year, but a couple of previous years, I had stuff launch right like December 27th or something. And it worked pretty well. I think that's a time when a lot of people are home and reading that, right up till whatever 2 weeks Christmas break is over. Now I launched my current project, not by choice, into the middle of coronavirus land. I think book 1 came out on the February 28th, so it was really before we knew the world was going to explode. I mean, there were certainly hints of stuff happening in other countries, but it hadn't really come to the US yet. So I was just like, that's the date I picked. That's when I'm going to launch my series. And, I don't know if it's good or bad. I have had people thank me for giving them stuff to read in this time. So I'm glad I'm able to put out the first 3 books quickly, and I have the new sci-fi coming out next month too. So it's nice to have stuff for people. So I don't know if I would, and it depends on how much you're depending on the launch to like pay the bills. If you have a big backlist, it becomes less important that something do spectacularly well. Hopefully it's never important for your career that something do spectacularly well. If you're planning on banking everything on that, that can be that can lead to disappointment. For the rapid release stuff, like Joe was saying, if you should know if this sounds like something appealing to you. If you write fast, if the idea of banking 3 books sounds great, go for it. But I hope we never give you the feeling of pressure, like you have to just write all 3, even though it takes 6 months to do a book and save it, because as we talked about on previous shows, things can change in that time. So it may be better for down the road. I've found it really useful for me, especially as someone who genre hops. I think if I just always wrote epic fantasy, I would feel less pressure to like put out 3 books to try to establish a footprint in this new genre and try to find new readers that are going to be into this genre. Because I certainly see like obviously I've been watching the urban fantasy list lately, and familiar authors just putting out a book 1 in a new series to their existing fans. They can do really well. They don't have that pressure so much. Maybe they have book 2 on pre-order, but they're not necessarily trying to put it out 2 weeks later. But for myself, I like 2 weeks apart, 2-3 weeks apart for the first 3 books in the series if you did bank them and you're not trying to write them that fast. I've tried 1 week apart, and that seemed a little too quick for people to work their way through. You get some people that will read it the day it releases, but maybe your more average reader might take a couple weeks before they're then eager to get on the second one. But I do find that the momentum really helps. And if you're going to do something like 99 cents for book 1, like I often do, again, this is as a genre hopper more than somebody sticking in knowing I have a fan base that's going to go out and pick. I mean, I know I have readers that are going to pick up anything, but if you're really establishing your genre, maybe you don't do the 99-cent release. But if you are doing that, you're not going to make a whole lot on book 1, and especially if you're in an expensive genre where advertising costs a lot of money, as I am currently finding. And this is not even, I know you contemporary romance people are like, oh, only $1.50 a click, what a deal. I wish I had that going on. Whereas coming out of epic fantasy, I'm like, whoa, what is wrong with these people? But then if you have book 2 coming out 2 weeks later and it's $4.99, and it's another, suddenly you're getting page reads from all the combined 2, and you have money coming in from that one, a more reasonable amount of money per book, that can get you positive really quickly, as far as making money from that series goes and paying everything off. I would say also, if you get the 3 new things in the marketplace at once, it can kind of help you coast for a while. I've certainly seen, even if things don't do as well as I've hoped, usually after I stop obsessively looking at the sales ranking hourly every day, and then like 3 months go by and I'm just doing my own thing, I'll look back and it's like, oh, those are actually still selling reasonably decently considering I pretty much forgot about them. And I am one who turns advertising spend down quite a bit after the, I try to give it 2 to 3 weeks to, if it's going to stick and get any organic traffic, that's sort of the time. So I will have I think I'm spending about $7 a day on my Star Kingdom book 1 right now, or the box set or something. So I don't do too much advertising outside of after the launch, after the first few books in the series are out. But box sets you asked about also. Yeah, right now still, I would say it's probably, everything's getting harder, everything's more competitive. Ad spend's up, everything costs more. So that is true. I'm not going to try to deny that. I feel that you can still do well right now with a box set. You have to decide, a Kindle Unlimited with like a complete series box set. The 2 I've had do really well were 5 books and, complete series for 99 cents, which also put me up around 2,500 KE NPC, maybe even more than that. You can have up to 3,000 that you can get credit for and get paid for. So as I've talked about before, the 99-cent sales kept the book in the rankings. So they were okay for that, but the real money was made on the page reads, which could be worth about $10 if somebody read the whole series. And I've seen people do box sets at $2.99 or $4.99. But I haven't seen them stick really high in the rankings in the categories I watched. So you have to decide what you're going for. If you just hoping to throw a whole bunch of money at it and stick for a while and get a lot of organic sales, like I have still I have one box set in KU, and I have actually been looking at the reports and like, oh man, this stupid thing is selling more than my new urban fantasy book one, you know, and it's for a lot less advertising, but it's been selling for months at this point. So it's got a little momentum behind it. And it's a great deal for somebody who's strapped for cash right now, and either 99 cents or free in KU. So you can't blame people for that. And at this point in time, it can be profitable because of those page reads. So if you're hoping to really get up there and get some organic sales too, you might try it at 99 cents. I find that all this works less well on a series starter versus a complete series or complete trilogy. You know, people love the idea of getting the whole story, not just a cliffhanger ending. I've certainly done box sets of my first 3 and had that really well as far as just driving sales to the rest of the series, but not so much that it's been a long time since I had one stick really high in the rankings organically. That was like 2014. So can't even compare that to what's going on these days. But yeah, you probably need to spend more, and it's going to depend what genre you're into. The smaller niches are getting less eyeballs, but also bids are not as expensive. So if you are doing like the 99-cent box set thing, I will warn you that it can take like, I would say 2 to 3 weeks before the page reads really start getting significant. I know with this last one I did, it wasn't as dragony, and it wasn't quite as to market. The series hadn't done as well as the Heritage of Power series with the dragons, so I wasn't expecting the box set to do as well. And it's done okay. It's been worth it, but I almost pulled the plug on it because I was paying $100 a day for advertising, which is what I had done for the first series, and the dragon series had some like $17,000-$20,000 months, so it was well worth the $100 a day for an advertising. But this one I was only selling 99-cent books, and the page reads were slow to really get rolling, and I almost pulled the plug after 2 weeks. I was like, I'm just throwing money at this, it's not really going to catch on. But I let it go another 2 weeks, and then it kind of flipped at that point, and it was well over 100,000 page reads a day for that for quite a while. So all stuff to think about. Try it, don't try it, whatever you're interested, whatever excites you. I do think, as I was saying before, this is a time when it's going to be important to be adaptable and not be too rigid and set in your ways, unless you're just set in your ways and you're killing it. But I think most of us, I've heard from a lot of authors the last couple of years, it's tougher, more challenging, not as easy as it once was. No surprises there. All right, next question from Jason Hamilton. If you could write one type of nonfiction, what would it be? And also, what are some successful multiple streams of income that you've seen in your business?
So I kind of do, I like writing nonfiction. I do mostly nonfiction for authors because I enjoy helping other authors quite a bit. So that's pretty much what I would choose to do, probably because, I enjoy that, but I'd probably also go with something artistic if I couldn't do anything around authors. And so probably like painting or playing the piano, guitar, viola, something like that. I would do maybe homeschool, maybe cookbooks. I honestly don't know, but I absolutely love where multiple streams of income is concerned. I've got the fiction side of my business, and I've got the nonfiction side of my business. And on the fiction side, I do have some merchandising. So like I've got these key thingies that I was talking about, just like little emblem, like little, for those watching the videos, these things that my husband designed and we build here. Those, like I said, I sell those for like $5 each, and they cost us between 5 cents and sometimes 20 cents to make, depending on which one it is. And we didn't want to sell them for too cheap. When we were selling them for $2, they sold not as well as they did at $5, which, because it's that perceived value. And so we made more money off of those. And then let's see, other streams of income, Patreon, selling books direct, audiobooks that are in the works. Hopefully those will get me an additional stream of income. Print books, I'm going to take a day here soon to do, to basically just like create a whole bunch of books, and I'll be doing a whole bunch of large print books because that is also an additional stream of income. And so I've got the nonfiction side with my author books, and then I've got courses there. They're fairly cheap to produce, so having them priced low has helped a lot. It's worked for me. And then I've also got the author side, the fiction side, and my attention has mostly been on the fiction side because that is the side that I'm continually drawn to. And so, multiple streams of income, it could be different pen names, it could be different genres, it can be different different series, just making sure that you are maximizing your profits in every way.
Um, so on, nonfiction books, I don't have a tremendous amount of insight into anything except writing these days. So I have a completely bizarre, crooked, cheapskate workflow for actually producing my books, and I think that it could potentially be of benefit to people who also want to be crooked, bizarre, cheapskates when it comes to making their stuff. Uh, it has the benefit, I mean, if you want to spin it in a positive light, it has the benefit of giving you the maximum control over the actual ebook formatting. If you are a real stickler for, I mean, Vellum is fantastic, but Vellum is essentially template based. And if you want to get, if you want to have something that Vellum won't give you, and I can't imagine what it might be, then you can certainly do it the way I do it. So I would probably write like a how I do it, nuts and bolts of writing and publishing a book. That would be my nonfiction. Um, Not so much a how-to, and more of a one-way to, because if someone was asking me how should I write a book, I wouldn't recommend it the way I do it. But the way that I do it might be of interest to some people. I'm not good at marketing myself as a nonfiction guy, just so as you know. And as for multiple streams of income, going wide is obviously my number one. I get money from dozens of storefronts. Aside from that, audiobooks are a good addition if you can afford them or if you can get them published by someone else. Translations have helped me a great deal. Less so in the last couple months, but certainly, overall, it's been a big benefit for me. And bundling and curation, Story Bundle. Hopefully by now everyone's heard of Story Bundle, but I have done quite a few bundles in the past, and I have curated quite a few bundles for them. So that's another source of income for me that has been pretty darn useful. But that's about it. I have tried merchandise, but I have not. I wouldn't call it an income source. It's more of an experiment.
All right, I'm going to recommend the show we had with Joanna Penn for this because she does a lot of nonfiction and does courses and affiliate links and all that stuff. That was back in January, I believe we published that one. So I don't do any nonfiction at all anymore. I used to do well doing content for my own websites in the home improvement niche. It was an area where people were spending a lot of money, often on big ticket things. So there's just more advertising and affiliate money potentially if you're doing web stuff. But actually, my most profitable website that became even more profitable after the last recession was on home security. Have since sold all those sites and focused completely on my fiction. I will say, like, home improvement books don't sell for piles. You'll see a lot of nonfiction, as far as nonfiction business books do really well. Anything that can help people make money, those are the kind of things that command a premium. But even in those niches, it's not usually the books that are killer for people. A lot of people in the nonfiction space do podcasts and videos and sell courses. Selling digital information has minted a lot of millionaires. It's basically the cheapest thing you can produce. It costs nothing besides your time in creating the courses and such. So you do have to really focus on establishing a platform, especially just like with fiction, nonfiction, and establishing yourself as an authority is also more competitive, more people out there doing that stuff now. But check out Joanna Penn if you're not already stalking her, and you can do what she does for your own niche. All right, question from Cecilia Mecca. How the heck do I launch a pen name, not bringing any readers from another genre with me at all? Is that too broad of a question? That's another one we could do a show on, but we'll take a stab here.
Okay, so I would recommend it doing precisely the same way you would launch a first-time author. Basically, a pen name is just a new author. You get a newsletter set up, you make a reader magnet, make a newsletter builder, seek out some cross promo with other authors in the genre. Like, it really is as simple as just imagine you were a brand new author, and that's how you launch a pen name. It's actually pretty important that you don't, I mean, in most cases that you would have a pen name, you don't want anyone from your old author identity to be picking out books. So you sort of can't use your previous cachet to help your new pen name. It really just comes down to you, the person running it, being better at building, author brands.
Yeah, pretty much what Joe said. Because I've got 3 pen names and I'm pulling things from the one pen name into my Andrea Pearson brand. It just make sure you know ahead of time how much work you're going to be willing to put into it. And then be honest with yourself about how much time you have to put into it. And if you can, don't launch a pen name unless you absolutely have to.
If I were to do it again, I wouldn't bother with more than a bare bones website and mailing list. You know, the social media account, anything that's going to obviously show that your name is dead or on hiatus if you wander off to other projects, probably not a good idea. Website, you don't have to put the date on things. So you can just kind of put up an evergreen site, you know, with your, here, just subscribe to the newsletter. Here's the bonus you get if you subscribe. And you know, all that can be automated. So, because I'm just assuming with my experience that eventually you will want to go back to your main name or you'll want to start another pen name. So try not to commit to too many things that would be a big time sink. This is also a place where writing the first couple of books in the series and being willing to launch one at a discount or even free for a few days can help. When I launched my pen name anonymously many moons ago now, I wrote the first 3 in the series. And I believe that was actually the first time I did that, my first rapid release series. And I almost as soon as it was out, I made book 1 free for a couple months. I put that wide so I could do that. And then put books 2 and 3 in KU. And they, you know, it did quite well at the time. I remember doing a couple blog posts on it. They're still on my site if you wander around, you know, and I think it made like 10,000 in six weeks or something with those first 3 books. As a brand new from scratch author at that time, I was not telling anybody about it. So yeah, I'd say probably do the first, if you can, if you know, if that's something that's plausible for you, write the first couple at least first, and plan to do a little bit of, if you have some money to spend, some targeted advertising. You can be really get down nitty gritty ASINs of the authors that are like the stuff you're doing, and just, you don't have to like spend tons of money, you know, unless you're trying to become top 100 or something. You can start with like $5 a day, really targeted stuff. Just pick books that are selling well enough, like the books that you're launching, and try to target those and get into their also bots. And that is all I will say on that for now. William Groupie asks or says, a couple people have asked similar questions, but I wanted to add my own version. I'm a new author who will be launching this year. I have 2 separate series that I expect to be ongoing. I am on the final review of the first book and halfway through the first book of the second series. My question is, do I launch them one at a time as they are finished, or do I wait and try to publish all 3 together at the end of the year, if I can get them finished, that is? I would like to release the first one since I have a stack of people waiting for it, but I don't know if that's the wrong move. Thoughts?
All right. I would say I wouldn't recommend releasing 2 books in different series at the same time. As is the case with many of the things I recommend not to do, I have done this and it doesn't work. It turns out splitting your attentions on a release is a bad idea. It's hard to market stuff in separate series with the same promo, so you're not like getting any benefit of both releases happening at the same time. And if you end up splitting the attention and dividing the sales of your audience between the 2, then they're both going to do worse in the long run. So I would just recommend that whatever you do, focus on, at the very least, give each release its own space in your calendar so that you can focus on talking about that one. Even if you alternate releases, which I have done to great success through most of my career, give each book breathing room so that it's the star of the show for its release window.
Again, what Joe said, just listen to Joe. He's got the experience here. So you'll split yourself too much between series, dividing your attention, which it would probably result in, I would bet like 95% of the time, it would result in things going poorly. Plus, same thing will happen with readers. It'll be hard to help them know where to put their focus. So if you write better when you're jumping between series, then do that. But I would suggest waiting to release one and focus only on releasing the other until you've had some time between the 2.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the consensus here and say probably don't release 2 book 1s, especially if you haven't released anything else in the series. You may actually get people looking at that kind of squinty-eyed, especially if you don't have a backlist of completed series that proves that you finished things. Because a lot of readers have been burned by series that were author started and then didn't finish. And I would probably wait until you have as far as not necessarily hold them all to release at once, but wait until you have 3 books out in the first series and focus on marketing that, really try to get the momentum going. And then if you want to get a second series rolling and alternate back and forth, go ahead. but I would question the strategy of trying to write and publish 2 series at once. I think it's going to kill any momentum you gain in one, and you'll probably find anyway that one sells better than the other one, and then you end up in this tough situation of, well, do I just abandon the one that's not doing as well and irritate those readers, or do I keep alternating and not have that momentum? So I would focus on one if you can, at the very least. Just hold back on releasing the second one until you have one established and people see that the series has got a few books in it. All right, we'll just, I think, answer the next question kind of quickly because we've already gone over a lot of this. This is from Takiri Hareth. Here's my current question. What's a profitable rapid release strategy for KDP Select that's worked for any of you? Monthly versus every 3 months? What marketing tactics did you add to boost your rapid release?
All right, so I've yet to have a really successful rapid release. I've done okay, but I would suggest that monthly is better than every 3 months. Every 3 months arguably isn't even a rapid release by a lot of people's standards. Stacking promos, that would be starting with your smallest boosts, and then and like your lesser social media and stuff like that, and then moving on to the smaller paid promo sites, and then working toward the biggest hitters, so that your sales curve is trending upward as opposed to spiking and then going down. That tends to be a thing that helps algorithms and stuff. But that's just over the course of a launch week of the first book, really. And yeah, that's where I land on that.
And what he said actually applies to, regular promotions as well. That whole spike, you don't want to have a big spike in the middle. You want to gradually build up and then gradually go down. But rapid release isn't something I've ever done, as I said earlier. So I haven't focused a lot on making launches profitable. I generally focus on making money once I have several books and series out, and once I know that I've got enough social proof on that first book in the form of reviews, and I have readers who, when I post somewhere, they'll say, yes, I love that book, and they also comment, and it's not just my review team.
And since I already answered some of this stuff, I would just say I like to do books 1 through 3, 2-3 weeks apart. And then, it's rapid release. So it's really only kind of the launch that you're really trying to do this. I mean, if you can keep writing them one a month, great. Most people will struggle with that, especially if you're like me and you're, as the series goes on, the books get longer and more involved, more POV characters. But I've found that that's fine, that the readers don't expect to see them still coming out every 2 weeks or, even every month. Like I had about a 5-month gap between 6 and what will be the release of 7 in my sci-fi series. And, the last book was quite long. So I'm just letting folks know that they're coming a little slower. We won't mention that I wrote 3 urban fantasy novels on the side before getting back to it. But I would agree with Joe that once every 3 months is not really a rapid release at that point. That's just that's your production schedule, and that's fine. You may want to, if you write that quickly, save the first 2 to do the rapid release. You don't have to. If you're, again, I've talked about if you're a genre hopper or if you already have a fan base, you're probably going to screw up the algorithms anyway. You're probably not going to be able to do that ideal start slow sales and gradually increase. I certainly couldn't. Amazon set out a new release alert and that spiked me higher than I got any time after that. That's why some people start pen names, so that won't happen, and they can carefully, increase ad spend and then start doing some of the, like I still do e-reader news today for sci-fi and fantasy. Book Barbarian, Robin Reads, a lot of those guys will do new releases. And if you are into the newsletter swaps, that can certainly help with spreading things out over a couple weeks for that launch. Again, 99 cents can work, and you can decide if you want to do that for maybe just the launch couple weeks. If you're in KDP Select KU, that may be less important, especially as we were talking, if you're more to the market. I would commit beforehand, though. I think it's bad form when you launch at $3.99 and then people buy it and then you go down to 99 cents like 2 weeks later because the sales weren't what you were hoping. Just if you think that's a possibility, just do 99 cents and then raise the price. And you can use that to your advantage too by telling people, hey, price goes up in 2 weeks. So if you're interested in getting it, get it while it's 99 cents, and that may help with sales. Also, if your last marketing thing, make sure and upload, or not upload, but claim your new release on BookBub, especially if you have followers. I don't know if you do at this point or not, but that's another place that will give you that sends out a free alert when you launch stuff. So the more things you can do to kind of stagger things and keep it selling for the first couple weeks, the better. All right. Is that enough on that? Yeah.
Is it okay if I make a comment really fast?
Yes, of course.
Okay, sorry, because it's really hard to be like, hey, can I make a comment when there's like that little bit of lag between us? So one thing that I think listeners should be aware of is that rapid release attracts a certain type of reader, not a bad reader, just people who read quickly. So those well readers. So if you release 3 or 4 times a year, you'll attract readers who are comfortable with that pace. And if you start releasing faster than that, you'll probably lose the readers who can't keep up with the faster pace. So this is me speaking from experience. If I release faster than what my regular readers read at, they stop reading a series. And so make your decisions wisely, be as consistent as you can be so you don't alienate your diehard fans, whether those be your rapid release fans or the slower readers. And if you do decide to release faster, then just recognize that you will have people fall off the bandwagon.
I'm going to counterpoint and say that they will probably catch up when they can, because I don't know, that's what people tell me, because I certainly have people too that are not as fast of readers.
I usually just get people complaining to me if I release too fast, and then they never tell me they catch up.
I've never had that. I mean, certainly had people say like, yeah, you're releasing them faster than I can read, but not in a like, don't do that way, I mean,
mine are bossier then.
Okay, well, fair enough. All right. Getting towards the end of our questions here. A.B. Martin, I'm a middle grade author with 3 books out. Most of my sales are driven by Amazon ads. On a recent podcast, I heard both Andrea and Lindsay say they have middle grade books in their backlist. I'd be interested to know how you both deal with the email list and newsletter for middle grade. I have a small list that I'm fairly sure is mostly adults who read middle grade, but I don't send out a newsletter that often. I'm not keen to target under 12-year-olds with a newsletter, and I'm not even sure if that's legal. Also, if a 10 or 11-year-old was to join my list, they'd only be reading the genre for another year or so before moving on to YA. I know the list is a powerful tool for indie authors, but I'm not quite sure how to deal with it for middle grade. Any suggestions would be appreciated.
And Joe skipped answering this question because it doesn't apply to him as much. So when I first started out, and after I had 2, maybe 3 series going, and I was like, things aren't going as well as I'd like them to. And I realized that I was targeting middle grade readers that age. And somebody actually, I think it was one of Mark Dawson's group, pointed out to me a couple of studies that I went and found and read. And I found that middle grade readers read middle grade for a very short period of time, and they usually do not go on to read young adult. They move on to read adult, or they only read for school. That continues all the way through college. People in high school and college generally read for school, or they'll read adult novels. And like I said, this is based on studies I've read. The biggest age group of readers for both young adult and middle grade, as shown by those studies, is adults around 40 to 50 years old. So once I stopped trying to target younger readers and I started focusing on finding adults who read middle grade and young adult, I actually started making money on those genres. So in my experience, my opinion, target your ads to adults in their 40s and older who read comparable books, but don't target Harry Potter, because that's an outlier, and people who don't normally read they've liked Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling on Facebook. So find series and authors that haven't been as big to target, and you'll find a lot more success doing that. That said, middle grade is a tough genre. It really is just hard to make money there. And I've said this before in the podcast, I've outsold huge authors on ebooks, and I was only making between $400 and $500 a month, and so I'd be number 1 in those genres, but I wasn't making enough to actually make a living on that.
So I don't market my one and only middle grade book, which is a collection of short stories, which is about the hardest thing you can pick. That was my first thing I ever self-published. And I was so glad I also decided to publish book 1 in a fantasy series, because I didn't know. Who knew short stories were hard to tell or hard to sell? But from what I've heard, we had a couple of middle grade authors on the old podcast interview people who actually write children's books and were doing well. And basically they said that you're going to focus your marketing on the parents, teachers, and the librarians, not the kids. The adults are the ones doing the buying, especially with ebooks. They're the ones that can purchase on. Well, they're always the ones with the money. Every now and then you had a book fair or something going around to the kids, and they might have a little money to spend on some paperbacks. But generally, they're the ones that that are the influencers for this age group, teachers and librarians, and they're the ones who are probably going to sign up for your newsletter. For newsletter content, you can point to other cool resources that kids might enjoy. A lot of authors in this demographic, or marketing to this demographic, go to schools for readings and try to sell print books in bulk. So hopefully that's you. Make sure if you do paperbacks, make sure you're pricing them high enough to make it worth your time, because this is a paperback loving market.
And if that
Yeah.
is you, I'm really sorry right now because everything's shut down.
Well, and then if you're an introvert, it's like school readings, oh my gosh, or reaching out, I would be horrified at the idea of that. So it is a tough market. Yeah, probably becoming an influencer in that genre would behoove you if you're at all interested in like YouTube videos and things like that, and have a lot of cool things for kids that you can share online for kids, but geared at like teachers or your audience and librarians. So it's challenging. So if you're not making as much progress as you'd like, know that you're not alone. All right, Diana L. Sharples asks, or says, I'm writing contemporary young adult fiction and have 6 books published, 2 traditional, 4 indie. This past year, family matters prevented me from working on marketing those books. I'm planning to publish 2 more books this year and hoping for a contract for a 3rd. Marketing contemporary YA is hard. I've recently lost my agent because of the difficult market, his words. What advice do you have for this genre of young adult fiction? I know YA fantasy and dystopian is hot, but what about contemporary drama, not romance?
Contemporary YA is hard, period. It's not a big genre. So study what does sell well in it from indies. You won't be able to replicate what traditionally published authors are doing. So don't spend a lot of time trying to figure out what it is that they're doing that is actually working. So focus more on, what other indie authors are doing. Just it's a tough genre, but because it's tough, that might actually mean that there is, who is it? Is it that John Green or whatever, The Fault in Our Stars? There's a lot of authors who write in trad pub for that contemporary YA genre, which means that there's probably going to be a market available for indies that has not been cracked as much. So you might have to wiggle around quite a bit and see if you can find your own little area.
This probably goes without saying, but it's going to be easiest for you to focus on the books that you indie publish, where you have control on the pricing and can run promos, especially if you have a book 1 leading into a series. I'm not sure if you've got a couple series going or if some of these are standalone, so it's a little hard to make suggestions. As far as contemporary YA goes, though, I would niche it down more than just calling it that. Actually, if you poke around on Amazon, there's like under YA literature and fiction, there's a lot of subcategories like homelessness and poverty, bullying, mental illness. I don't know how many people are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to check the mental illness category today to make sure I can get some new awesome reads. But I would try to like niche it down a little bit and also figure out like, what is your brand? What are you doing that's not so vague as drama? That's like saying I publish literature and fiction. It's too vague. You want to be able to like be the best or be somebody really appealing in that one specific thing that you do well. And sometimes it's like reading your reviews and what the readers are saying to find that thing. Like for me, I feel like it's quirky characters is sort of one of my things in an epic fantasy or space opera setting. And but maybe it is that a lot of your stories as dramas, maybe they're dealing with bullying or violence at home or whatever the common element is. So the more you can kind of brand yourself as that, always delivering on that thing, if it's possible, the easier it is. And I poked into some of those categories, and like the 100th best-selling book had a ranking of over 600,000. So if you find a little spot, you may be able to at least, even if you're not the bestseller in that category, at least it's a place where you can get some rank and maybe just start selling a little bit each day. And that's maybe dystopian, and romance are better. But I think that if you kind of find your spot, and like I said, look at your reviews and see what the common element is if you're not quite sure what your little niche is. And then go with it, market that, put it in your blurb. I'm the person that delivers this. And again, when you're, we talked about being willing to go free on a book 1 if you're not really in a hot market or writing too closely in the perfect genre that is a little easier to market, playing around with free and doing if Fierce series, book 1 leading into the rest of the books. All right, I'm wearing down here. That was the last question though. So do you guys have any wrap-up stuff? Joe, you didn't answer the last 2 questions. Do you have any thoughts on the world of publishing here on March 23rd as we're recording this that you want to close with?
Just, it's going to be easy to start to panic. Like we talk about, there's a recession coming and there's a gigantic question mark as to how book sales are going to look in the current health climate. Just try not to panic and try to be aware that you can't change anything today. Like you should be planning. You look at how things are going and you plan and you stay nimble. We're independent authors for the most part, and as a result we are a little bit more agile. So I just think that, like, as the time goes on, if you're worried about how things are going to go, keep an eye on the trajectory, keep working, and just try to have plans for success and failure. That's the best I could say right now.
And I've seen a lot of comments from people who write, post-apocalyptic and natural disasters and disease-related books, and they feel guilty marketing those. And I'm like, don't feel guilty. People, like, look at what's going on out there. I don't know if you guys know the game Plague Inc. It's a little app for a little game for phones or whatever. I played that like insanely, madly, when I was pregnant with our last baby and then with the baby before that. And it's this game where you create a disease and it wipes out the population. And the whole goal of the game is to wipe out the population of the whole world, which is really tacky right now. But they are getting so many downloads. Like, they're doing really well right now. People are naturally drawn to the natural disasters that are going on around them. And so if you're writing those things, market them. Don't be, it's not tacky. You have to make a livelihood. And right now you're probably going to do better than those of us who don't write that kind of thing. And so, if you've got something, I'm this like little shoulder angel saying, you're being really horrible, Andrea. Why are you telling them to do things, take advantage of this? But I don't know, it's part of owning a business. You do the best that you can to reach as many customers as possible. And if you write a genre that's related to what's going on right now, then, take advantage of that. And don't feel guilty about it, because you have to make money too.
Yeah, I saw something that like Outbreak and all these disease movies, pandemic movies are like doing really well right now. People are like morbidly fascinated and getting all this stuff. And so I think that's certainly a possibility. Don't be scared if you're launching that stuff. But I think also there's a market for people who just want some escapism and are happy to go, slay some dragons with your hero, or take a nice space flight to a utopian world where, I don't know who's actually writing anything like that. There's always problems in our books too, but books with happy endings, let's say, are always popular with many people. And this is a time where actually I think that we're not gonna get through this as authors without any blips, but it is a better industry to be in than a lot of them right now. Lots of people, I had some great page reads yesterday on Sunday, lots of people just holding up by government order and watching some Netflix, playing some videos, and reading some books. So hopefully, there will be opportunities for those who pay attention. I guess I haven't changed what I'm planning to launch, my schedule for this year or anything I'm planning to do. I'll just, probably try to give away maybe some few extra stuff for free just to give people things to do in between the launches. So that is about it from us this week. As always, we talked much longer than I thought we would when I grabbed the questions. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Joshua Pearson for producing the show. If you have time to leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen, we would appreciate it. Also, if you want to join our listeners-only Facebook group, search for Six Figure Authors or check the show notes for the link. I hear a dog crying from the back room, so that is my time to sign off and walk them and feed them. Bye, everyone.
See you all later.
So long, everybody.